Hi everyone, it's Katie Miranda. I have received a lot of questions over the last week about the situation in Gaza and Palestine and Israel, and I have considered how to respond. And I decided that making a video to try and give some context to the whole situation may bring some clarity around this issue. My story, quick background on me, my mother's side of the family is Jewish. I grew up considering myself Jewish. I lived for 6 months in Israel on two different kibbutzim, and in 2006, I went to Palestine, to the West Bank, to volunteer with the International Solidarity Movement. I decided to become Muslim after my exposure to the religion in Palestine. So my goal here is to present you with some facts. And when I have an opinion, I will share that opinion. I'm not interested in propagandizing you, because if you want propaganda, you can just watch the mainstream media or you can go on TikTok. My goal here is to share my knowledge and my opinions and allow you to form your own opinion. This video is no budget, it's no editing, it's not sound bites, but my hope is that if you listen to the end, it will be time worth spent for you. So I am not pro-Palestinian, I'm not anti-Israel, I'm pro-human. And being pro a particular race or ethnicity or a religion or anti one is really counterproductive, in my opinion. I would say that I am anti-Zionism because Zionism is a political ideology that privileges the rights of the Jewish people above the rights of everyone else who lives in the region. And there are a lot of people living on the land that Israel controls between the Jordan River and the Mediterranean Sea. They include, but are not limited to, Palestinians, Muslims, Christians, Armenians, Africans, Druze, and many others that I'm probably leaving out. And for one group to be given more rights and more privileges and to be under a separate legal system than others, that breeds anger and resentment. And the situation we're in right now, in my opinion, is the result of 75 years of that. 75 years of Jewish people in this region. And by that, I mean the West Bank, Israel, and Gaza, Jewish people having more rights than everybody else. And to just give you a quick example of what that means, because a lot of people just don't know what that means, I'm going to talk about the work that I did when I was volunteering with the ISM in the city of Hebron. The neighborhood I lived in is called Tel Rumeida, and in it, Palestinians live side by side with Israelis. The Palestinian citizens cannot drive cars. Israelis, of course, can drive cars. So what does that mean? That means if you go grocery shopping and you live in Tel Rumeida, you have to park your car somewhere far away from your house and bring in your groceries in a wheelbarrow or on a donkey. It means that if you get sick or injured, there's no ambulance that will come and pick you up in front of your house. Israeli ambulances will not serve Palestinians. So if you are sick and you're a Palestinian in Tel Rumeida, you have to walk out of your neighborhood or be carried out or wheeled out in a wheelchair and get an ambulance to pick you up somewhere else. There's no buses for Palestinians, no taxis for Palestinians. Everyone in this neighborhood who is Palestinian has to walk. And there are Israeli cars and buses and ambulances going through. So this is apartheid. So I'm not interested in blaming here. There's no victim blaming that's going to go on here. These are the results. This anger, this resentment towards the Israeli government, towards the IDF. You saw the same thing in South Africa when the rights of white South Africans were privileged above those of everyone else. So I have a very serious question that I want to raise about the attacks in Israel recently. And before I can go on, I want to say I'm 100% against attacks on civilians for any reason, under any circumstance. And if you are not unilaterally against killing civilians, just stop watching this video, because you and I were not on the same wavelength, and you're just going to find this boring and irritating, and it's just going to waste your time. You can go, I invite you to go watch propaganda videos instead, if you're cheering the killing of civilians, whether they're Jewish or whether they're Palestinian. The movement that I volunteered with, the International Solidarity Movement, is a strictly nonviolent movement. And I'm speaking as a former volunteer with the ISM. We practice the principles of nonviolence as taught by Gandhi and Martin Luther King. In 2004, the ISM was nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. And if you'll bear with me, I have some screenshots that I would like to share with you. So this is an article from October 20th, 2004, when Canadian Member of Parliament Sven Robinson nominated the ISM for a Nobel Peace Prize. So something happened last year that I did not speak about publicly because, quite frankly, I had 99 problems, and Karin Sanfriedson was just not one of them. I don't know her real name, but please don't go look up Swedish women named Karin Sanfriedson and harass them, because it's a very common Swedish name. And I am trying to share another screenshot, if you'll bear with me. As I said, there's no editing going on here. This is just me recording myself. This is Karin Sanfriedson. So things are a little different now versus they were last year. And I would like to share with you my experience with her as it relates to the current situation in Israel and Palestine right now. I met Karin in 2017 in Amman, Jordan, where I met some current and former volunteers with the ISM. Karin claimed to be a volunteer and had just come from Palestine to Jordan to meet with us. Several of the other volunteers who were there had worked with her in Palestine and knew her. I got to know her. We spent a lot of time together. And when our time in Jordan was up, we traveled back to the West Bank and we stayed together in an apartment in Hebron. I was there for about a week, and then I went home to the United States. So Karen and I stayed in touch over email, and she told me that she was going to go to California, and she asked me if I would be there. So this was the last time that I heard from Karen. October 7th, 2017. So I don't live in California, so I did not see her, but she did travel all the way to California to meet my friend and colleague, Paul LaRudy, and she stayed in his house. So, as I said, that was the last I heard from Karen until last year, when I learned about a documentary that she made with the right-wing Israeli organization Ad Khan. It was a 4 or 5 part TV series that went on Israeli TV about various Palestine solidarity movements, and it was released last November. And as it turns out, Karen was being paid by the Israeli organization Ad Khan to follow us around and record us. And I'm going to share with you a screenshot of that. And I will also share a link to it. So this is a screenshot of one of the episodes from the documentary. That's me, circled in red. As you can see, I'm wearing the same dress, same exact dress. So I shared a bedroom with her. We had lots of private conversations. So I can only assume that she was recording everything. When she went to California to visit Paul, she recorded everything. And it's part of this documentary series. And in it, they're trying to find a paper trail between the ISM and Hamas. And there was none, because there is none. So the reason I'm sharing this information right now is because it's very relevant to the current situation. And that is, if there are the money and resources available for this kind of infiltration of nonviolent organizations, nonviolent movements like the ISM, just regular people. You know, I'm an artist. I'm not very active. What I did when I was over there is I walked Palestinian children to school because Israeli settlers were throwing rocks at them and attacking them, and the Israeli police wouldn't do anything about it. That was the main thing that I did over there. So if there are these kinds of resources available to infiltrate and record people like me, what kinds of resources do you think are available to the Mossad for infiltrating and monitoring and spying on Hamas? I'll tell you, because I read a book by former Mossad operative Viktor Ostrovsky called By Way of Deception. And in it, he gets very candid about how the Mossad operates, both in the Middle East and in Europe. These people have absolutely zero morals. Zero. They get told about a target and they go in and they kill that person. There's no trial. There's no presumption of innocence until proven guilty. They just go in and execute people around the world that they perceive as a threat, regardless of the civilian casualties that follow. Children are killed in these operations, women, innocent bystanders. You can read all about this in this book. So if you have never been to Palestine, you probably are not familiar with the concept of collaborators, Palestinian collaborators. And I have a point that I'm getting to here, so please just bear with me. Palestinian collaborators are people that the Israeli government has recruited to spy for them. And it's usually because the Israeli government has some kind of dirt on them, like maybe they're gay, or maybe they're having an affair, an extramarital affair, or maybe they have some kind of corrupt business dealings. And so the Israelis use that dirt to blackmail the Palestinians into spying for them. And I'm going to show you the headline of an article. You can go look it up if you wish and read the whole thing. I'll just summarize it. It's from AP. So this is about a young man who was caught on video having sex with another man. And the Israelis had a copy of this video. And they told him that if he did not spy for Israel and report on his fellow Palestinians, that they would expose him. So he made the choice to spy, and he was found out, and he was executed by Palestinians. Now, before you rush to judgment, if you are an American, know that one of the punishments for treason in the United States is death. And it doesn't happen very often, but recall that people were calling for Edward Snowden to be executed for treason before he had even had a trial. He's never had a trial. And it has happened that Americans were executed for treason. Julian and Ethel Rosenberg were convicted of spying for the Soviet Union in 1953, and they were executed. So my point is, if there are enough resources to infiltrate and spy on our little nonviolent movement, and knowing that the Mossad has nearly unlimited resources, the question is, how did Israel not know that something like this was going to happen? And I haven't even gone into electronic surveillance. But if you have read any of the Snowden reports, you know that most of our electronic communications can very easily be read by governments. And Hamas is Israel's main enemy. So it's a given that they are being spied upon and monitored. So it is the Israeli government's job to know what Hamas is up to. So here's an article from The Guardian talking about Egypt warning Israel of the attack days earlier. And you can go look this up if you want and read it. And you get to make your own opinions here. I'm trying to share facts, and I'm trying to share my opinion and being very clear, like which is which. I believe that the Israelis did know that something was up, and it is my opinion that they used their own civilians as collateral damage so that Netanyahu could go in and do something he's wanted to do for some time while the whole world is cheering for him, while the whole world is behind his back, instead of condemning him. And I think that he wanted to go in and do something about what he considers to be the problem of the Palestinian population of Gaza. And I also know that Hamas knew that the reaction from Israel would be very swift and very terrible, as it has been. And they knew that civilians would bear most of the suffering. And they did it anyways. And is the civilians who are the ones who will suffer the most? The babies, the women, the elderly. You may have heard that the UN was told to move 1.1 million Palestinians from the north of Gaza and to the south in the last few days. And Israel dropped leaflets from the air telling people to leave. So Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Seymour Hersh wrote an analysis, and he apparently has some very high-level contacts in Israeli intelligence. And I wish I could share this whole article, but it's behind a paywall, but I will put a link to it. This is just one paragraph, and I'm just going to read it. By the end of the week, Israeli jets were dropping leaflets telling the citizens of Gaza City and its surrounding areas in the north that those who wished to survive had better start going south, walking if necessary, 25 miles or more to the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Sorry, my phone just rang and I'm trying to turn it off. As of this writing, it was not clear whether financially stricken Egypt will allow 1 million immigrants, many of them committed to the Hamas cause, to cross. In the short term, I have been told by an Israeli insider that Israel has been trying to convince Qatar, which at the urging of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was a longtime financial supporter of Hamas, to join with Egypt in funding a tent city for the millions or more refugees awaiting across the border. It's not a done deal, the Israeli insider told me. Israeli officials have warned Egypt and Qatar that without a landing site, the refugees will have to go back to Gaza. So what does that mean? The Israelis don't want them going back to Gaza. They don't want to deal with them at all. They want them gone. And that's what they're trying to do with them here. So I'm going to share another screenshot of a map. So this little dot down here is near the border of Gaza and Egypt. This is Egypt in here. This is Israel and this is Gaza. This is where the refugees are supposed to land. And then what are they going to do? Become refugees again? Most of the people in Gaza are descendants of refugees who fled their villages in 1948. So the people of Gaza are being made refugees again. And if you know anything about Palestinian culture, you know how steadfast and stubborn they are. They want to go back to their land, as they have for generations now. And these Palestinians that Israeli is moving to Egypt are still going to want to go back to their land. This doesn't solve the problem in the long term. So I'd like you to think about the generational trauma inflicted upon these people since 1948. It's multiple generations of people being displaced from their homes. It's not just going to go away because Israel decides it wants to be rid of these Palestinians, because Israel ethnically cleanses Palestinians from Gaza. This problem is not going to go away. And if you look at this graphic from the Palestinian organization Visualizing Palestine, it illustrates what children born since 2007 have had to deal with through no fault of their own, children who live in Gaza. So I want to encourage people to speak out and not to fall in the trap of feeling like criticism of the Israeli government is anti-Semitic, because it's not. Any more than criticizing Hamas is anti-Palestinian. Any more than criticizing the American government is anti-American. I criticize the American government all the time. In fact, for several years, it was my job as a political cartoonist to do just that. But I feel like the best course of action now is for people to contact their representatives in whatever country they live in and let them know how you feel. So I want to address some questions that people have been asking me lately. One is the complaint of, well, they elected Hamas, so this is what they get. Yes, Palestinians did elect Hamas. But in case you forgot, in 2016, we elected Donald Trump. And then in 2020, we did something just as stupid, if not more so, and we elected Joe Biden. This is my opinion. But it is relevant here because I do need to point out that this election where Palestinians elected Hamas, it happened in 2006. There's not been an election since then. This election took place with the backing and the support of the US government. This election was facilitated and supported by the US government. The US government were hoping that Palestinians would elect Fatah, the opposing party. But as in most cases, when the US meddles in the business of other people in another place around the world, it backfired and Hamas won. There have been no elections since then. So another question that often comes up is, well, isn't Hamas a terrorist organization? And this is a really complicated and nuanced question. And most people on social media, they don't want complications and nuance. They just want black and white. And that's not me. That's not how I talk. So I'm going to give you some context here. The question, is Hamas a terrorist organization? Really depends on who you're talking to. I saw a video the other day, and I wish I could find it to share it, but it was a video of a non-Palestinian kid looking up at the sky and happily pointing out an airplane, just like my three-year-old son does when he sees an airplane. And it was contrasted with a video of a Palestinian girl from Gaza screaming in her own house when she heard an airplane fly by. She was screaming in absolute terror. Because when an airplane flies overhead in Gaza, it means they're coming to bomb and kill. Palestinians don't have an airport in Gaza. It was destroyed by the Israelis. They don't have an air force. They don't have airplanes. So Israelis view Hamas as a terrorist organization, but Palestinians view the Israeli army and the Israeli Air Force as a terrorist organization, because that's what they do. If you're a Palestinian, they terrorize you and they harass you. And I could do a 3-hour-long video of all the times I've seen this with my own eyes. Just the IDF terrorizing Palestinian civilians. So this depends on your point of view here. Israelis don't consider the IDF a terrorist organization. They support the IDF. But if you're Palestinian, the IDF terrorizes you and your family. I don't like either of them. So I'm almost done here, but I just want to make one final point. The other day, my husband and I were watching a documentary about the ancient civilization of Assyria, which was in modern day Iraq, between the Tigris and Euphrates River. And one of the Assyrian cities at the time, it was called Ashura. And at its height, it was maybe about 40,000 people. And to the south was Babylon. And it was also about 40,000 people. These were two of the most populous cities in the world at the time. And the Assyrians went down to Babylon twice and destroyed it twice. And I'm sitting there watching this thinking, they have so much land. The human population of the world at that time was so tiny. And there's so much land. There's plenty of land for everyone. There's plenty of resources for everyone if we're fair, if we treat people fairly, if we treat people equally. And so I heard Elon Musk saying the other day that the entire human population of the whole world, if they stood shoulder to shoulder, they could fit in New York City. And I had to look it up to see if it was true. And I found this website, Wait But Why, which shows how much space we have in the whole world for humans. But we need to learn to share it. So I think I'm going to conclude here. Thank you for watching. I'm going to put some links to the articles that I referred to. And I would highly encourage people to donate to organizations supporting people affected by this. I don't know what else to do at this point, aside from calling your representatives and telling them how you feel. Thank you for watching.